think that the tech stocks are having their kind of reckoning day. They got these valuations because every pension fund, every fund was just loading the boat and continuing to kind of get into them. And that gave them these nutty valuations that even an Apple had. And still, in my opinion, even with Apple going up on earnings, it's still a little on the pricier side.
In today's video, Chief Market Strategist of InTheMoneyStocks.com Gareth Soloway tells us all about his latest analysis of the charts as well as his predictions and price targets for Bitcoin. According to Soloway, Bitcoin may face a lot of uncertainties in the near term as a result of the ongoing global economic declines. Soloway shares his opinion regarding high inflation rates, the stock market, the crypto market, and the Fed. Before listening to him, please ensure to smash the like button and subscribe to the channel.
What are your thoughts on where Powell will stand? I'm probably pretty sure I know where you think on the rate hike, but what about the comments after? What's your feeling?
Yeah,
right now?
and the bottom line is whether we get a 50 or 75, and I think the market's pricing in a 75.
Yeah.
The market is rallying and we're well off the recent lows on the hope that he's going to pause. So we're not talking about a real pivot in that he would start to cut. That's not going to happen. But the market just wants him to step back for a few months and reevaluate the data for like 2 or 3 months in a row. And so I think that's what the market is hoping for. And if he does do that, I think you see a bounce or a pop in the markets on Friday. If he still talks about raising in December another 50 or 25, I think the market's going to get pretty scared again that he's overdoing it, and you're going to be pushing this market into potential major recession, not just minor. Minor's kind of the base case at this point for me. Yeah. It's a matter of how bad does it get, because again, we haven't even, he's raised now 375s, probably 4. You could argue that maybe only one of those rate hikes has filtered into the economy at this point. And so there's a lot of filtering that needs to go on, and we have to see where the economy stands at that point. And that's scary to me. I think that the tech stocks are having their kind of reckoning day. They got these valuations because every pension fund, every fund was just loading the boat and continuing to kind of get into them. And that gave them these nutty valuations that even an Apple had. And still, in my opinion, even with Apple going up on earnings, it's still a little on the pricier side. Now, Meta is starting to become interesting to me. That is definitely seeing a big discount. I love when everyone's hating on a stock because that's usually when the emotion is too bearish and you'll get a snapback. But certainly we are seeing the reckoning. And you saw the Dow, right? I mean, the NASDAQ 100 is barely positive on the month, but the Dow's having its best month in a long time. It tells you there's a rotation of capital going on.
When you look at Meta as a whole right now, where do you stand on this right now? Is this one that you think can pull itself out of this? And what is the long-term effect for it?
Yeah, so I think Meta's in a particular situation. And what's so fascinating about this is to compare it to Snapchat, right? So Snapchat had horrendous earnings as well, dropped like 25, 30%. But then a few days later, it rallied back basically to $10, about 30% or so. And initially when Facebook reported just the numbers, the stock traded to 141 from about 130. And then all of a sudden we saw that Zuckerberg was still going to be spending $10 billion and the stock just tanked, right? So what this tells me is that their core business is still, basically the valuation where we were was fine for the core business. It's this spend crazy kind of atmosphere where the market does not want it. In a bear market, people are not going to give it 10 years to produce, right? In a bear market. Now, in a bull market, what's fascinating is we've seen all these hopes and dreams give crazy valuations. But we have to remember that it's a difference in types of market. And right now, investors are not giving more than a year out. That's one of the reasons why Zuckerberg is being so kind of hard-headed in spending for the metaverse. It's because he sees that their core business is eventually going to slowly disintegrate. And again, we're still talking, probably a decade plus out, but he's kind of building the table. And I said this in a tweet. I said that, if you have that horizon and he builds out the metaverse and actually succeeds, and listen, we should also give him credit. Mark Zuckerberg bought Instagram. People said they overpaid for him. That was a genius move. He bought WhatsApp. They said he overpaid and it was a genius move. So part of it is the market and investors not willing to give him credit and kind of believe in him at this point. And I think part of that too is that he's the controlling shareholder. And therefore, it's whatever he wants goes. You don't have a kind of a checks and balances in the system either. And I think that makes investors very, very nervous. But I wouldn't be surprised if in 10 years, the market cap cap of Meta is more than Apple or any of these other companies if he succeeds.
Do you think Apple has a chance at being able to go head to head if in fact they do create, whether it's an AR device or they do create kind of an app ecosystem that enables something like this? What are your thoughts on Apple in comparison?
Yeah, so inevitably, I'm a believer that Apple, as soon as they see that there's money to be made in a massive amount, they will jump in. We heard about it with the electric car. So far nothing's come of that, but their whole ecosystem. I mean, they have this ecosystem with such dedicated investors and clients that inevitably, if there's money to be made, they're going to get involved, and they have the cash on their balance sheet to do it in a major way. I mean, talk about a cash cow is the Apple company just producing so much money. So I think that, again, that's part of Zuckerberg's play here. He's like, I have to get a head start here. My core business, yes, it's going to slowly decline. It's still a great cash cow, but this can fund the next big thing. But again, the problem is it's not paying investors right now, and that's what investors want.
Aspect. When you look at it right now, trading at around $93, which is down even again over just the last couple of days, how do you think this plays out in the next, say, month and a half?
Yeah, so I'm in the camp where I do expect some sort of big technical bounce. And I think one of the things that as a trader, and number one, as a trader, we have to look for technical levels, right? So one of the things I'm seeing is there's a ton of support right in this level, right around $86 to $87. So It's not that far away, another $7, basically another day like today, and it would be almost there. But that is going to be basically taking you back to this consolidation period before the breakout that continued, you could arguably say, all the way into last year, was basically that's when it started. So this would be what I would consider to be kind of a retrace to the beginning. And also, if you look at the valuation of Meta and what it was producing back in 2015, you can't argue with the fact that the company is much more profitable, much bigger than it was back then as well. So there's a lot of value here. And I do think that people are at the point of just kind of throwing the baby out with the bathwater. And if Zuckerberg, if he just gives even an inch to this market or to the investing public and says, hey, listen, we're going to buy back, $5 billion a year and maybe only spend $5 billion or $7 billion on the metaverse, you could see a massive short squeeze in this name. So to me, I love opportunities like this. I mean, this is where, as an investor, yes, there's risks, but you've discounted it to such a level that it's basically there's no expectations. And when there's no expectations, it doesn't take a lot to just outperform.
And basically, it's kind of a modified version of what they call the NVT ratio, which uses a 90-day moving average for this to basically look at October being an up month. Let's jump to your charts, Gareth, because I want to get your opinion on how this may play out, especially on the Bitcoin chart.
Yeah, sure. So let's bring that up right here. Flip over to Bitcoin, and basically what we have on Bitcoin, we had a breakout that occurred about 10 days ago here, right? So we had this beautiful downsloping trend line, and this is something I was expecting. I think last time I was on, I said we might go as high as 22,500, maybe 25 on this pump, but it was all predicated that we would break out of this channel, right? Or this wedge pattern. And that's exactly what we did. And now what you're getting here, after we got this 2-bar move up, we're basically seeing sideways chop. Well, as of now, that sideways chop is called bullish consolidation. And what's interesting is it's consolidating into the Fed on Wednesday. So my guess is we're going to stay sideways choppy into the Fed on Wednesday. And then you're either going to see the most probable outcome, which will be a move up, or if the probabilities fail, then you'd see the downside move. But I would favor the upside with a target here of around 22,500 near term. Maybe max upside would be 25 over the next month or so into year end.
With what you know right now on whether it's a hawkish statement this week or a potential neutral stance, hawkish or neutral, I think, is a negative position. The only way this gets positive if he goes dovish. What are your thoughts on November? Do we see another up month here for the markets in general and Bitcoin, or do you think this is more of a down month?
Oh, wow. So as we get into November, and this, I mean, to be honest, a lot of this, and I'll show my chart here, a lot of this is going to be predicated on what the Fed does, just like you said. And so note, the one thing that I'm kind of eyeing is the fact that if we zoom out on this S&P chart, you have this trend line that's sloping up and then this little bit of an area right here. And so we're right into a decent resistance line right here. Now, if the Fed says the right things, we could pop as high as this down-sloping trend line, which would be around just over 4,100 on the S&P 500. But I am concerned that we've already had a big rally up. If the Fed, again, doesn't kind of give the market that pause after a hike, then I think we're headed very quickly to the downside. And it still concerns me, honestly, that we haven't even retested the pre-COVID highs, right? The February 2020 highs on this market. We came close, but we didn't get there. So for me, I'm more inclined to think that it'll be a whippy November, but it wouldn't shock me if at some point we see a down November overall. For me, definitely in the metals. I'm more interested in looking at the metals here. If we bring up gold is continuing to kind of pull back a little bit. We've seen the dollar stay relatively strong. The one thing that I've been noticing on the US dollar is that, and I'm going to bring up the Dixie here, is that you're in this kind of range where you're starting to make a high, lower highs, and lower lows. So again, we could be seeing maybe a short-term top in the dollar. The fact that the dollar's rallying into the Fed statement makes me think that it might see a reversal to the downside, and that might help us in that near term get a risk on gold trading higher type move. So right now I'm just keeping an eye on it, but I would say for me, the safest place, and this is key because, you could say, okay, if the dollar is going to go down, then stocks are where you want to be, but I'm not feeling comfortable enough to put serious money into stocks versus gold. I still have that very bullish midterm as well view on gold. So I'm more in the metal side of this.
Do you agree with where Robert is going around this? Just pretty much this is their plan going forward.
Yeah, so I do agree that we're closer to the bottom, considering 69,000 to 20,000. Sure. Yeah, but so I mean, this is the issue: is that I think we're all in agreement that at some point Bitcoin is going to pivot into a safety trade. But the question is when is that going to happen? And I just don't see it yet. It's still too speculative. We don't have the framework for regulation out there yet that's going to get money, the big money, comfortable enough to get into Bitcoin as a safety asset. At this point, there's still a lot of money that's too scared to even go near it. So I think, again, yes, I agree that will happen. But for me, it's more of a 6-12 month out type thing before we see that pivot. And that still leaves the door open for the next equity dump to cause Bitcoin to also have a dump.
Do you think that has a bearing overall on what could be happening here in the United States in terms of rate hikes and inflation in general?
I do. In fact, I think that you saw the first flicker of the Fed, pausing because of the currency issues that the US dollar is now inflicting on places like the UK, the European Union, as well as in Japan, with the Japanese central bank actually intervening in their currency markets as well. And so I think, weirdly enough, everyone says, the stock market being down is why the Fed's going to do it, or the economy or the economic data. I actually don't think any of those. I think if you weren't seeing the pressures of potential global currency collapse out there, the Fed would probably be looking to do another 50 in December or so after a 75 on Monday. But it's at a point where they really can't. And these central banks, and by the way, one of the reasons you knew this is because two Fridays ago, the Wall Street Journal released an article saying that the Fed was going to hike 75 and then pause, right? And the reason we know that's significant is because in the past, the Fed has used the Wall Street Journal as a conduit to let the market know. And not only did that happen on that Friday, but then literally an hour later, the Japanese central bank then intervened. And to me, that was a very coordinated event where it told you that central banks aren't just closing their eyes and doing what's just right for their country. They're paying a global attention to the other countries out there, and they're kind of coordinating.
When you look at Ethereum, you got Vitalik over here saying, hey, listen, crypto is better than gold here, all right? But at the same time, Ethereum, and when you look at the transition, obviously with ETH2, we've seen a lot of movement within it. What do you think, and how do you think, will ETH continue to track with what's happening with Bitcoin through this fall and early to next year, Gareth? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I do. I think for the most part, they're tied. I think the weird divergence could come when we get the regulatory stuff and from Gary Gensler at the SEC, because again, there's going to be this defining difference where we know that Bitcoin is a commodity. We know that likely an Ethereum is more of a security, but we don't know the specific rules that this the crypto markets have to play by. And I think as you start to see this come out, it makes sense that you'll start getting varied valuations, right? What does a commodity get valued at versus a security like Ethereum could be, and what are the rules that it has to abide by? So I think that this is going to be a pivotal point where you could see maybe potentially Ethereum really start to play catch up to Bitcoin in terms of market cap if the regulatory stuff is put into the right form, right? It's all about the right form.
Is there a pivot point for, let's say that we go into this and we do get a dovish play from the Fed. We get the 75, but a dovish response that we're going to kind of pause for a moment. How do you think that would play out on Ethereum's bones?
Yeah, I do think Ethereum would go higher. And if I show my chart, I'll show you where. So it's going to have some interesting levels. And if you take the all-time high on Ethereum going back to November of 2021, and you stretch a trend line right here, you actually have Ethereum just underneath that level. And that's going to be the big test for Ethereum. If it can get through there, you've got some potential solid upside north of 2,000. But I think as a trader and an investor, we have to really be watching this. Like, it's right around 1,680 bucks. You got to see, can it get through there? If it does, you got quite a bit of upside at minimum back to this double top right here, maybe even higher. But right now it's stuck below resistance. Maybe the Fed news will push it through that level.
We've been playing XRP for a while, even though it is kind of moving in a little bit of a flat zone there. Gareth, what does your chart show for XRP? And do you think this is one that can stick around for a nice rally should they get a good decision?
Yeah, so I mean, number one, if they have a good decision, this thing can rip. There's no doubt about that, right? So if it goes the way of XRP, this thing probably has maybe $1 written all over it. But that's a big if, right? And so we have to kind of be aware of that is a question mark. It's not really what I would call a high percentage trade to know what the judge or guess what the judge is going to do. What I do see is, and what I can just follow is that you had this breakout, right? Beautiful breakout outside of this longer term wedge pattern. And basically you topped out, made sense, right? This high here became this high over here, or that low became this high. And since then, we've been going sideways. And this, again, would be viewed as consolidation. So bullish consolidation as of now. The one thing I would not want to see happen, see this trend line connecting this low and this low, I don't want to see price trade below that. As long as it doesn't trade below that, I think you do have some potential upside on it. And I would probably give a slight positive bias to the judge's decision being positive to cause that rip.
This is Joseph. What he's talking about, XRP will settle soon, triggering a massive bull run. Do you think that could really happen if, let's assume the nirvana occurs. The SEC gets their butt kicked. The judge comes in and says this wasn't a security and is setting precedents possibly for the entire market. What would happen to crypto at that point? What's your feeling?
Oh, I mean, I think if that happened, you'd see 20% upside in Bitcoin in basically a day. I do think that would be huge because remember, everything that the market is craving right now is knowing. And if this would basically set a precedence, like you're saying, and that would give a lot of relief to a lot of people, would make a lot of shorts cover as well in the crypto space. So I think you'd have a massive rally across the board. I hope it happens. I don't know if it will. It's just, I think as an investor, remember that this is a high risk environment and you don't know which way it's going to go. So there's a lot of people that want to just gamble. Technically, just make sure you're gambling then with money you can afford to lose.
Yeah. A lot of people loving Doge with its crazy upside with Twitter. Have you been watching that token? It's been absolutely insane coming off. I mean,
it has been insane. And I have been watching it, and it's simply, I mean, bottom line is we know Elon Musk is a Doge fan and he bought out, he did take private Twitter, and there's just speculation that maybe he'll make it kind of the universal crypto of Twitter, which would be huge for Doge. There's no doubt about it. So I think there's a hope of that, and that's why price has gone up so much.